Okay, get this. You have over 600 muscles in your body. 600! And they're all working together right now, letting you do, well, everything. From something as small as lifting a finger to something as huge as running a marathon. It is an absolutely incredible, complex machine at work inside you. And today, we're going to pop the hood and see how it all works.
So here's the game plan for today. We're going to start with the big picture, what movement even is. Then we'll meet the engines of the body, your muscles. After that, we're going deep, taking a microscopic look at how they're built and uncovering the secret to how they actually contract. Then we'll zoom back out to the skeleton they're attached to, and finally, we'll wrap up by looking at what happens when this amazing system runs into problems.
All right, first things first. You probably use the words movement and locomotion pretty much interchangeably, right? Well, in biology, they actually mean two very different things. So let's get that cleared up right now. I mean, it seems like a simple enough question, doesn't it? But these two actions are fundamentally different. One of them actually moves you through the world, while the other, well, it's just a movement that happens in one spot. And that difference, it is absolutely key to understanding how scientists talk about all this.
So, here's the deal. Blinking your eyes, talking, waving your hands around, all of those are movements. But running, swimming, walking, that's a special kind of movement we call locomotion. And that's because it actually gets you from point A to point B. It's a simple but super important rule to remember. All locomotion is movement, but not all movement is locomotion.
Okay, so what's powering all this movement and locomotion? Well, it's the engines of our body, of course, our muscles. And it turns out you don't just have one type. Nope. You've got 3 distinct kinds, and each one has a very, very specific job to do.
And this chart here just lays out the differences perfectly. First up, you've got skeletal muscle. This is the stuff you control consciously. It's attached to your bones, and fun fact, it looks striped or striated under a microscope. Then there's visceral muscle, which is also called smooth muscle. This is in the walls of your internal organs, and you do not control it. I mean, thankfully, right? You don't have to consciously think about digesting your lunch. And finally, there's cardiac muscle. This one is unique to the heart. It's also striped like skeletal muscle, but it's involuntary, beating away on its own powerful rhythm.
Okay, so for the rest of our time together, we are going to focus exclusively on that first one, skeletal muscle. Why? Because this is the powerhouse. This is the muscle that lets you interact with the world around you. It's responsible for every single voluntary action, from a simple handshake all the way to a high jump.
All right, now for the really cool part. We're about to go on a microscopic journey. We're going to zoom way, way in, past what you can see in the mirror, to uncover the incredible, intricate architecture of a single muscle. I want you to think of a muscle like a really thick rope. The entire rope, that's the muscle. Now, that big rope is actually made up of smaller bundles of rope, right? We call those fascicles, and each of those smaller ropes is made of even tinier little threads. Those are the individual muscle fibers, the actual muscle cells. It's this whole bundled up structure that gives muscles their amazing strength.
But what if we zoom in even further, down past the fiber level? Well, then you see this. This incredible repeating pattern is called a sarcomere. And this is the fundamental unit, the tiny little engine that powers every single muscle movement. Those stripes you see? They're just these perfectly organized rows of proteins, all lined up and ready to spring into action.
So what exactly are these proteins? Well, let me introduce you to the 2 main players, actin and myosin. The easiest way to think about them is that actin forms these thin filaments, kind of like thin ropes, and myosin forms the thick filaments. And these myosin filaments have these tiny little heads on them that act like a whole team of rowers. It's the powerful pulling action between these two that generates literally all muscle force.
Okay, so quick recap. We've seen all the parts, right? The big muscle, the bundles inside, the fibers, and now these 2 proteins, actin and myosin. But the big question is, how do they all work together to actually make a muscle contract? Well, the answer is just this beautiful piece of biology called the sliding filament theory.
And this right here is the core idea. Now, a lot of people think that the protein filaments themselves actually shrink or get shorter, but they don't. That's a huge misconception. Instead, what happens is the thin actin filaments slide over the thick myosin filaments, kind of like interlocking the teeth of 2 combs. As they slide past each other and get closer, the whole sarcomere shortens, and that is what we call a muscle contraction.
And this whole thing happens in a flash. It starts with a nerve signal from your brain that zaps the muscle. That signal causes a flood of calcium ions to be released. Now, calcium is the key. It basically unlocks the actin filaments, which exposes the sites where the myosin heads can grab on. The myosin heads bind and then, boom, the power stroke. The myosin pulls the actin filaments inward. Then, a little burst of energy called ATP comes in and breaks that connection, so the myosin head can reach out and grab the next spot. It's just this incredible, super fast cycle of grab, pull, release, and repeat.
Okay, so we've got a pretty good handle on the muscle engine, right? But what good is an engine without a chassis to move? It's useless. So let's zoom back out and look at the chassis of our bodies, the skeletal system.
206. That is the number of bones in an adult human skeleton. But here's a fun fact for you. You were actually born with closer to 300. A bunch of them just fuse together as you grow up. And these bones do so much for us. They provide the whole framework for our bodies, they protect our most vital organs, and of course, they act as the anchors for all those muscles we just talked about.
And this whole framework is really neatly organized into two main parts. First, you have the axial skeleton. This is basically the core, the central axis of your body. So think your skull, your spine, and your ribcage. Then you have the appendicular skeleton, and that's pretty much everything that hangs off that core. Your arms, your legs, your shoulders, and your pelvis.
And you can really see the protective power of that axial skeleton right here. I mean, your skull is basically a built-in helmet for your brain. And your rib cage acts as this amazing flexible shield for your heart and lungs. It's just a brilliant piece of natural engineering.
But look, a rigid frame isn't enough, right? If you were just solid bone, you couldn't move at all. You need pivot points, and that's where joints come in. Joints are simply where bones meet, and they're what allow for movement. Now, some joints are fixed in place, like the ones in your skull. But others, called synovial joints, are filled with this lubricating fluid and allow for a huge range of motion. Think about your shoulder or your knee. Seriously, without these joints, we'd all just be statues.
So we've explored this truly amazing, perfectly coordinated system. But, like any complex machine, sometimes things can go wrong. It can experience problems. So to wrap up, let's briefly touch on what happens when the system falters.
And here are just a few common examples. You've probably heard of arthritis. That's inflammation in those crucial joints we just mentioned. Then there's osteoporosis, which is when bone mass decreases, usually with age, making fractures way more likely. Muscular dystrophy is a tough one. It's a genetic condition where the skeletal muscles themselves just break down over time. And then something like myasthenia gravis. That's an autoimmune disorder that attacks the very spot where the nerves are supposed to talk to the muscles. See, each one of these affects a different specific part of the machine we've just been exploring. This quote really says it all. Locomotion requires a perfect coordinated activity of muscular, skeletal, and neural systems. It just perfectly captures the whole idea. Movement is never a solo act. It's not just your muscles, or just your bones, or just your nerves. It's a symphony, with all three systems playing their parts in perfect harmony to create this beautiful thing we call motion. So, what's the big takeaway here? I think it's this. The next time you just get up and walk across the room, take a second to appreciate the sheer complexity behind that simple act. Think about the nerve signal firing, the flood of calcium, those filaments sliding past each other, your skeleton providing the leverage. It's mind-boggling. So now that you know just how incredible this biological machine is, the final question is for you. How can you better support it and keep it running smoothly for your entire life?